trigger warning, this is going to be a hashtag honest talk on race. And I'm going to show you a clip from a Dinesh D'Souza interview from the 90s, where he's interviewed about his book, The End of Racism. And this interview changed the way that I look at the issue of black people, right? Now I piss everyone off about it, right? And the whole interview is worth watching, and it's linked in the description. And the sort of arguments that he makes, that Dinesh makes, are really necessary to confront, you know, if you're anyone who wants to have a hashtag honest talk on race. Now, I should say that I don't know whether or not Dinesh still puts it the way that he does in this interview. So, putting that question aside, I totally recommend this interview. And just to kind of prep you for it, I would say that when it comes to treating someone as an individual, right, this is important. This is a philosophical issue here. But you can only treat someone as an individual if you've wined and dined them, right? It's like a euphemism, you know, whining and dining, right? If you've gotten to know them, then you can treat them as an individual, right? You have to keep this in mind. And, you know, there's a famous Jesse Jackson quote that you should consider, right? He says, "There is nothing more painful to me at this stage in my life than to walk down the street and hear footsteps, then turn around and see somebody white and feel relieved." Okay? So that pretty much sums up everything. That's Jesse Jackson. And now for the choice part from Dinesh D'Souza's interview.
Now, you reject the notion that American society is systemically racist, but you do say that we practice, which you've introduced a term, which is interesting, rational discrimination. That is that we do discriminate, but that there is a certain rationalism to the way we discriminate. And I think one of the examples that's used all the time is the cab driver who might be driving past a black youth in urban America will not pick them up because their experience is that a black youth is 5 times more likely to commit violent crime than a white youth. But that analysis, what does that do for the black youth who is law-abiding and isn't part of that underclass who gets passed by the cab driver?
That's a very good question. And see, I think our debate on this kind of subject is terribly polarized and irrational now, because what happens in effect is that black activists say the cab driver is a bigot. Even if it happens to be a Lebanese cab driver or a West Indian or a Nigerian or a black cab driver, acting no differently than a white cab driver, they say, well, he's just internalized white racism. So the cab driver is presumed to be a bigot, and the cab driver presumes that the black activist is crazy because he cannot understand that all the cab driver is trying to do is get home to his wife and family. The concept of rational discrimination allows us to say that we have a distinction to be made between rationality and morality. The cab driver is acting rationally. He is trying to protect his property and security. And the law-abiding young black who's passed up by a cab is appealing to morality. What he's saying is, I have a right to be treated as an individual based on the content of my character. To which the cab driver responds, I would love to do that, but frankly, I'm not in a position to get to know my customers personally. If I could ask you about your family, about your crime rate, about whether you have a criminal record and so on, it would be one thing. So we have a tragedy. And I think what we have to do is ask whether the law-abiding African-American's right not to be inconvenienced, right to get a cab, is more important, or the cab driver's right to protect his life and his cab. And I think that in this case, it is the cab driver's right that is more important.
So you go a step further. You say that rather than focusing on the cab driver as a bigot, what this law-abiding black youth who can't get the cab ride, or in fact gets stopped unduly by the police because they have that same kind of socialization, that same experience of dealing with black violence, black crime. What he should be doing is blaming his black brethren who is a criminal, and that in fact,
or if not blaming, at least recognizing that that is the source of the problem. Look, immigrant groups have always said, for example, Italian communities living in New York would always be exceptionally angry if the grandson Vito was caught stealing or was caught involved in some crime, because they would say, look, you are giving the Italian community a bad name. In other words, you are making us all look like we are part of the mafia or part of organized crime, and we will be especially severe on you. There is absolutely no such accountability at least on no systematic level in the black community. That the reason that the cab driver is acting this way is because the Sentencing Commission, a liberal advocacy group, recently released a study. 1 in 3 African Americans in the United States is on any given day in prison, on parole, or on probation. These are staggeringly high crime rates. And the point is, by changing those patterns of behavior, we make rational discrimination less likely. I argue that that's the best anti-racism now.